Good evening, class. I have decided to base my project off of a paper discussing the Guam bird population and how it is affected by the brown tree snake, which is an invasive species. My name is Tori Manley, and this is Habitat Monitoring and Landscape Assessment with GIS. It is focused on the cocoa bird, which is also called the Guam rail, or the Galerius owenstonii, the cocoa bird. The objective of this presentation is to show the audience the recent history on the Guam rail and how the brown tree snake has affected its population in its endemic location, which is Guam. Guam is the largest and southernmost island of the Marianas Archipelago. Guam is about 45 kilometers long and 6 to 13 kilometers wide, meaning 30 miles long and approximately 6 miles wide. We have a humid climate throughout the year. I chose, this is the map of Guam. The projection is used by the Kruger. This map is perfect for the information that I'm trying to relay. It's a little distorted on the vertical side, but that's okay because we didn't need that. We were focusing more on it is horizontally distorted, and vertically is what we are focusing on. The area of focus throughout this entire presentation will be right up here, and I will tell you why later. These are the villages of Guam. We'll be focusing also on this area. And this is the main road, which we did not need throughout this presentation. Project objectives and deliverables. The stakeholders such as Guam EPA, the Guam Visitors Bureau, Fish and Wildlife Services, Department of Ag, and the National Park work together, and approximately 20 other off-island organizations are creating the potential influx of the population to ensure that they can come back home to Guam. And I've also created this map using infrared to demonstrate the different densities of vegetation on Guam. The vegetation on Guam is important because of the brown tree snake population towards the cocoa bird. There we go. The brown tree snake is invasive, and the yellow represents the lack of vegetation in Guam, which is where both the cocoa bird and the brown tree snake thrive. In certain aspects, this projection of this map distorts any useful information due to how far the view is from the geographic area. And then all of this gray is cloud cover. This is an audio of the cocoa bird. So lovely. Now that we've talked about the geographic location of Guam, let's go dive deeper into what the cocoa bird is. So this is the cocoa bird. It is endemic to Guam. It has only lived in Guam. It is omnivorous, and it is flightless, which makes it dangerous for the cocoa bird to live in an area where the brown tree snake is densely populated. This image was taken a little while ago. You can see his tag here. Roadside counts during the 1968 record the number of Guam rails seen in 4 different habitat types, which are savanna grasslands, that is where large brown tree snakes can reside, mowed grass with bush, mature mixed forests, and mix woodland with brush. So the Guam rail mostly stays in those areas, and then the brown tree snakes stay in highly dense jungle areas. Thankfully, that's not where the bird resides. Here's maps segmenting the island into 3 different sections. This is the north, which is primarily limestone forest. This is the central, which is half limestone forest up here, and then coral, and then volcanic formations down here. And this is the southernmost region of Guam. And all these little areas is the lack of vegetation. Mostly there is vegetation there, but this is mostly the tops of mountainous areas and rivers. And then this sort of green color is where the forests are most dense. So the analysis and results between the brown tree snake and the Guam rail. In order to have a successful habitat rehabilitation on Guam for the Guam rail, the brown tree snake problem must be addressed. So the paper that my primary paper that I have focused on throughout this presentation has some graphs. It did not just focus on the cocoa bird right here. It also focused on other species of Guam birds. This baseline is the interaction between the brown tree snake and the cocoa bird. If there was any differences, if the brown tree snake affects the livelihood of each bird. And we'll focus on the cocoa bird. As an adult, they weren't as affected, but if we go down to the next chart, these are the different life stages during a bird's life. And you can see that the cocoa bird, towards the brown tree snake, their population is not as affected as other birds. But the brown tree snake did affect the egg and nesting and the fledgling life stage of the bird due to the size of the bird and its mobility. So although the Guam rail is a flightless bird, they are able to attack small birds. They are able to attack small snakes, and that is not the case with the eggs, nest, and the fledglings. And then the juveniles, they are still affected towards the brown tree snake, but not as much as if they were eggs. And they nest to the ground, and that is why they make easy prey for the brown tree snake. Cocoa was ranked next to least vulnerable in this survey way back then, and was reported to behave aggressively towards the brown tree snake, and they were capable of killing small snakes. This is a flightless Guam rail, or the cocoa bird, and you can see their beak is perfect for pecking small brown tree snakes. Biological Research Division in the U.S. Geographical Survey developed snake barriers. This was to address the population and how they have affected the Guam birds. So in order to address the problem, they've chosen different areas. The Department of Agriculture Wildlife Service provided highly effective traps in reducing and localizing snake populations. This map was taken from another source. That is not my primary source of information, but this was created in 1983 for the distribution of the Guam rail and where they have been most cited as a native bird that has been seen in the wild. So sorry, major tongue twister. All right, so this is where they were. This is what we consider Retidium Point. There will be another map down below to go into further detail. And here's the legend. This is where the birds were most abundant. They were the most common, uncommon, rare, and extirpated. I'm so sorry. Conclusion. Some of this information I've obtained from the Native Forest Bird Recovery Plan. This was an in-depth plan that I saw way later during my study, and I've stuck to a particular article pertaining the cocoa bird and the brown tree snake. So if you want further information what happened to the native forest birds, here is the link. And this is the different habitats that I have found that the government has put aside and restored since the 1980s in order to bring the Guam rail back into the wild. So all these points or these divides here, just out of experience from living here on Guam, this is where you can find a lot of traps, and this is the divide between each habitat point that will be in focus when they do eventually come back to the wildlife. So this is Retidium Point, and this is where a lot of conservationists monitor protected species here on Guam. These are the essential habitats of Guam forest birds in northern Guam. These are the designed key areas, and some families have even agreed to monitor or let the government use their private land for endangered species being reintroduced. Before the reintroduction of the Guam rail to its native habitat, the brown tree snake had to be controlled. So that was once the small scale and large scale traps have been completed and the brown tree snake has either been effectively eradicated or the population is controlled to a minimum, we can bring the Guam rail back. Oh my gosh, what is that? Okay. All right, and this is a short video clip to the Guam rail and where they are right now.
Laura Duenas, a wildlife biologist with the Department of Agriculture, says a recent announcement from the International Union of the Conservation of Nature is a major milestone for the cuckoo bird.
It used to be extinct in the wild, and now is critically endangered because of our released populations on Cocos Island and Rota.
The cuckoo, or the Guam rail, is a bird endemic to Guam, which means it was found only on Guam and nowhere else in the world.
It's a flightless bird, so nests on the ground, stays on the ground for the most part. They do climb trees, just like you find a chicken up a tree. They can do the same thing, and they're omnivorous, so they eat everything from seeds, fruits to insects.
The cuckoo bird are great for pets. In the 80s, there was roughly about 21 to 24 cuckoo birds left in the wild. Then in 1984, it was placed on the endangered species list. By 1987, they were able to catch 21 birds and put them in captivity. The next goal, according to Duenas, is to actually get them on Guam, which is their native range.
There's actually populations for the last 5 years. We've been monitoring the cocoa population on Rota, and we've actually had it where we never had a disappearance in the population in certain areas in Rota, and we've actually had confirmed reproduction. So chicks, families with chicks, actually sighted all for the last 5 years too. So it seems that there's a stable population in Rota, and that can actually act as a source population for Guam reintroductions.
Currently, there are about 200 cuckoo birds in the wild in Rota, and another 60 are on Cocos Island.
The people of Guam still have barriers to access to them. You either have to get on a boat or a plane to actually see the birds in the wild. And so what we want to do is perpetuate the importance of the birds, especially Guam's birds, the endemic ones, for all of the people on Guam, because, if you can't see them, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind.
In conclusion to the video for conservation,